move on. So thank you all for coming to this ASCI national event. My name is Flavio Macu. I am the ASCI Chapter WA President. I'm also from Edith Cowan University. And we are here today to talk about skills, to talk about employability, to talk about the present and future of supply chain management and procurement, and in the context of Skills Week. And before we do that, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land. And we are here in different lands because we have connected people from many different states. The place that I am in actually, it is Noongar land. So I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land, their elders, past, present, and emerging. And I'd like to welcome the panel that we are having today to talk about skills in the context of National Skills Week, which is about how do we further improve not only our career prospects, but especially the career prospects of those that are in a way early in their journey, their supply chain management procurement journey. And we will have a discussion from many perspectives. Michael Page, who is kindly hosting us today here in Perth, will provide us through Ryan how it looks from those people, from the perspective of those who are filling the positions for those big business around the country, how it looks like, where we are today, and what employers are looking after when they do contact Michael Page. And that will be Ryan bringing some insightful information to our discussion. And then we'll have Justin from Queensland, who hired people himself. He is a top manager in this space. So Justin will provide us with his perspective, what he's looking after. And then we have Sandra as well, who is in many ways an early career, who just made the move not long ago from looking for those positions and now actually fulfilling the expectations and building her expectations as to those who are coming. And last but not least, we have Professor Denise Jackson from Edith Cowan University, who is a national specialist on jobs, employability, and skills, with lots of insightful research on that space as well. So thank you for coming. And as you may know, what is the main role for ASCI? And ASCI is really engaged into advancing the professionalization of supply chain management and logistics procurement here in Australia and New Zealand. And ASCI recently, not that recently, but not that long ago, came up with a new registration pathway that is open to all supply chain professionals or wannabe professionals to bring their experience and talk about their key skills to become registered associates, and then hopefully registered practitioners as they advance in their careers, and finally registered professionals. And that's about the accreditation scheme that ASCI is offering. And you can definitely find more information on our website. Just you can Google it, and you can go to ASCI registration, ASCI accreditation, and you will find the information that you're looking for. We can talk a little bit more about ASCI towards the end, but without further ado, what I would like to do is to, again, welcome our panelists and let them introduce themselves a little bit further as they speak, quickly talking about who they are and why they are here and what's the perspective that they are bringing. And let me start with Ryan. Ryan, I believe you have some really interesting figures for us about the job market and employability. So if I can please invite you to start our conversation today.
Thanks, Flavio, and thanks to everyone who's part of the committee. For those of you who don't know me, My name is Ryan Lanzon. I've been with Page for 14 years now. I'm part of the team which is recruiting across all of procurement and supply chain in Perth. And one of the things that I've always enjoyed the most about my job is being involved in these sort of associations and just doing whatever we can in some small way to help the connectivity and the advancement of people and skills and awareness in the industry. So it's always something that we're committed to and love partnering with ASCI along the way. So no, thank you again for the opportunity to be part of it. Right, first test is I'm going to share my screen with you. Let me know. Can you see that screen now? Can you see that presentation?
Not yet. No. That looks like something is coming.
You got it now?
There you go. Now we are about to see your presentation. Yes, we can see the slides now. Thank you.
Okay, no worries. So just quick introduction to the team. So there's three of us in the Perth business. The two most important ones there are Chris and Seaton. They're both in our boardroom right next door to where I'm sitting today, actually. Chris, we've been lucky enough to have in our business for a number of years now. He's an absolute expert in supply chain, logistics, procurement in the Perth market. He's been doing that for well over 13 years now. So they're really lucky to work alongside Chris. And he's always around for any advice or information or recruitment needs. So that's Chris. And then Seaton, who's recently joined our business. And we're also very lucky to have him on board. Seaton will also be recruiting across procurement and supply chain, more in that sort of entry level and mid-market. Some of the knowledge that he's picked up in a very short space of time is quite baffling. In a very good way, he's already teaching Chris and I what procurement and supply chain is. So it's great to have him on board. He comes from a big sporting background, and you can see his competitiveness and his drive into everything that we do. And he also had some operational experience across the supply chain during his previous work before Michael Page. So yeah, that's the team, and yeah, I'm really lucky to work alongside these two gentlemen every day. So I will move on and just give a quick update into a few things across the market, some from a really broad perspective, and then some which will be quite specific into the sectors that we're all here to talk about today. So we look at a number of indicators when it comes to the job market and what all that means in terms of people and skill sets. And one of the things that we always look at on a month-by-month basis is what the job flow was like out there. Last month it was actually a really small number. There was only a rise of 2,000 jobs in July. This is some of the HSBC data. So to give you an idea, it was 29,000 jobs in June. So I think that's clearly now starting to just slow a little bit with the depths of the lockdowns, in particular in New South Wales and Victoria. So we have seen that drop quite significantly from June to July. But for the months of this year, we were seeing jobs rise month on month, anywhere between 20 and 30,000 per month. So it's been a very, very positive year when it comes to job growth across the country. And that's also reflected by the unemployment rate, which is now the lowest it's been in around about a decade. So all in all, despite the lockdowns in Victoria and New South Wales, the demand for people is actually still quite positive. Having a look at a recent report which was put out and talking about what is actually creating some of the biggest impacts on supply chain resources at the moment. And at the very top of that response rate was really around the shortage of supply chain talent is one of the biggest impacts into the supply chain today. So it really does reflect the fact that good people are in high demand, and there is, typically speaking across the country at the moment, a really good level of demand for the top talent, and the job flow is really quite positive. So most companies that we're speaking to at the moment are indicating that actually attracting good talent and onboarding them is one of the biggest impacts that they've got to the execution of a really good supply chain in their business. The other result that came through from that same survey was the next biggest impact was really around the shift in the consumer base. So for each company, the market that they're serving into, the other biggest impact that they're having is the shift in their consumer base. So for many companies, they're just changing the way they do their business. And in some cases, they're changing the way they do it very quickly. So companies might have a supply chain already set up to do business a certain way, but their client base is changing pretty quickly just to adapt to the current market. That's also having a pretty big impact. So it links to the sort of skills that people need to have to be able to keep up with that. And I'll come on and talk about that now. So there's two ways that we look at the skills that are in demand. One of those is soft skills, which is really around personality characteristics and behavioral characteristics. The other is the technical skills, essentially. And when we look at the technical skills that are most in demand right now, it's continued to sort of drift down this path for quite a period now. A lot of it is based around analytics, and that can be analysing data as a really primary skill set that we're seeing in demand. So candidates that have got a really strong aptitude to pull apart data, but use it for really, really meaningful business decisions, that's one of the skills that we get asked for really, really commonly these days. Supply chain risk management, again, the supply chains out there in this current landscape are probably working as hard as anyone and having to try and adapt almost on a daily basis to keep inventory in play, to get it there on time, to get it there safely, to get it there under all of the compliance and regulations that are put upon them, to actually manage that risk. Again, candidates who have got that type of skill set is also something that's really become very prevalent. In particular, the acceleration over the last 18 months in that market has been quite incredible. Change leadership, and that's not necessarily designed to target people who are leading teams of people. It could be someone that's not actually managing a team of people, but someone who's got that ability and that knowledge to deal with change. That's also a skill set which is in really, really high demand at the moment, because almost gone are the days where the role that you are executing is going to be the same every day, every week, every month over the course of the year. People are having to change what they do on a day-to-day basis, more so than in any other market that we've seen for a very, very long time. Business transformation, again, it links back to the risk management part. Companies are having to transform in many ways the way they do things on a very, very regular basis. So again, candidates who can bring to the table examples of where they've done that in the past, again, they're also the ones that are being looked upon really favourably at the moment. Now, that doesn't change the fact that best practice and the execution and knowledge of best practice is still at the forefront of what every person needs to know, but it's on top of that, and it's being able to adapt and have that transformation experience, as well as being able to execute best practice, again, is something that we're looking at and seeing from a demand perspective very, very strongly. Technology is a really obvious one, but it's not clearly not going to go away. And again, candidates, leaders that have got that technological expertise, again, are the ones that are going to be in the most demand. And then when we look at the actual recruitment of the roles that we've recruited really recently, again, a lot of these haven't really changed. These are very, very common for the jobs that we recruit these days. Anything to do with inventory control, analytics, change management, optimization, the real nitty-gritty of the procurement market, strategic sourcing, category management, the planning side of those roles, and anything in that logistics space has been very, very common. And then just a few fun facts down below there, which really substantiate some of the things I've talked about before. Job ads are another piece of data that we look at very, very regularly. And this year, job ads amazingly are up 156% versus this time last year. Now, that's also going to be inflated by the fact that April, May, June, July, August last year clearly was the heart of COVID, so there weren't many jobs. But I think we've all been caught off guard a little bit by the acceleration of the job growth. Now, those states there are in order of job growth from an advert point of view. So Victoria, Tassie, South Australia, New South Wales, Queensland, WA, the Northern Territory and the ACT, they are in order of the biggest job growth ads year on year. The flip side of that is candidate availability is a 5-year low. So for all the ads that are getting put out, we're getting a 5-year low for candidate availability. So it goes to show the pressure on supply chain resources. And again, it links back directly to that very first point that I talked about the supply chain shortage is what's causing the biggest challenges around companies advancing their supply chain right now. And the industries that are contributing to that growth of job ads, trades and services, so blue collar, again, no one can get enough blue collar trades and labour people right now. Transport and logistics, great for everybody on this call. That's a market which is continuing to grow. HR, IT and engineering are the other ones that are driving that. So yeah, there's some information there. We'll come back to some of that on the panel as we go along, but hopefully there's some exciting and interesting information for all of you there.
Thank you so much, Ryan, for this valuable information. And we have time for one question before we move to the panel. So if someone would like to raise your hand and bring your question, or maybe quickly type it in our chat, that would be good. Just to speed up the conversation a bit, Ryan, have you noticed any changes in how much time it takes for you to find the right people for your clients? Is it taking longer or shorter? How is it going?
Yeah, it's a really good question. The short answer is longer, almost without doubt. And there's a number of reasons for that. One reason is that the talent pool is shrinking, as I was alluding to earlier. That's definitely one reason. The other reason is majority of people are in work. So to actually get them interested in another position can sometimes take more than one interaction. It can be a really long process to get them interested. So that's another reason. And then thirdly to that, for many companies, their process can change during the actual screening and the interviews and everything else. So what might start out as a particular process, again, the scope of the role might change. There's so many factors that contribute to that. But yeah, we're probably finding that the processes are taking anywhere between 15 and 25% longer these days to get someone from when a job is released to us to onboarding.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And I believe that we can move on to the panel. And I'd like to ask my initial question, and we can go through with Denise to give us a perspective, more a generalistic perspective, and then dive deep with Justin and Sandra about, because we are talking about the skills week and we're talking about leadership. So to the panel, what are the skills that we need today to the job market? Some a quick look at the generic skills, and then if you can be more specific about what skills are needed in the supply chain management space. So if we can start with Denise and then move across the panel, that would be fantastic.
Thanks, Flavio. Yes, so I'm the Director of Work Integrated Learning in Edith Cowan University, along with Flavio. And I do a fair amount of research on what industry is looking for in new graduates and early career professionals. And there's some consistent themes. They do vary somewhat by the sector or the industry that you're in, but there are some consistent themes across industry demands, contemporary labour market demands. Some of the key ones are problem-solving skills and analytical skills. So really being able to process large volumes of information and pull out key points from that, and generate some solutions through creative thinking is really important. And other areas, adaptability. So being agile and being able to operate across different work contexts is really important. I think for anyone nowadays entering a career, being in one single job for life or with one company is quite unlikely to happen these days. And you'll find that you'll be moving across different companies, but also possibly across different industries and different sectors as well. So really being able to adapt your own skill set and your knowledge to those different contexts quite quickly is really valued by employers. Other ones is, I'd say, being able to communicate well, and particularly communicating at different levels. We tend to have flatter organizational structures, so often you'll be communicating with very different, people from different functional areas, senior leadership, all the way through the chain, as it were, of people. So being able to adapt your style and connect with others, so you can collaborate and work with them is obviously important. And one last thing before I pass over is quick thinking, initiative, and really, thinking on your feet. We obviously, we're in a time of flux and rapid change, and it's really important that you can, think creatively to try and be innovative and move away from the status quo and push things along. In terms of supply chain specific skills, I'll pass back to you, Flavio, to move to someone else in the panel, because I'm more focused on the generalist skills.
Fantastic. So Justin, if we can provide us with some insight building on what Denise just said, that would be great.
Yes, thank you. Ryan and Denise, it was some really good points there. I agree with all of that entirely. So in terms of my background, I'm the chapter president for ASCI in Queensland, and I'm also on the board for ASCI. Currently a senior procurement manager within a manufacturing business here in Australia. Look, I think that we've touched on those, we call them soft skills. I even tend to think of them sometimes as emotional intelligence, which is, sort of being able to read the state of play, being able to read the audience, and being able to understand, to have the self-awareness of how you interact and engage. I think that self-awareness and building teams, understanding your impact, positive and negative, whatever that may be, and being able to self-reflect and see that, is important, particularly, as people become leaders, that they've got that emotional intelligence. So I don't think that's going away. And I think that plays into communication. I think we touched on a number of different things there, certainly around your ability to adapt. I think that's a key one with supply chain. And we've seen that with COVID. I know in my experience, and probably many of the supply chain people's experience, that COVID over the last 18 months has been a huge, if not, it probably impacted supply chain more than any other roles anywhere. And the ability to adapt and address and deal with that has been critical, and we've learned a lot. And in there as well, business transformation, we talked about that. That is critical to supply chain, because a lot of the business transformation is coming from supply chain. When we look at any business, the business I'm in, for instance, we have over 2,000 suppliers. So it's no longer our business versus another business. It's our business and 2,000 suppliers versus another business and their 2,000 suppliers. Are we getting more value out of those 2,000 suppliers or not? So, we need to look at that transformation. That's just covering off a bit of that soft skills and a few of those things that the previous people talked about. I couldn't agree more with a lot of that. I tend to, and the problem solving, I think, in the analytical piece was clear, and I completely agree. On the technical side, I tend to break it into the supply chain piece, into the procurement, and into logistics broadly, and then probably into the planning aspect. And then there's a bit of automation and technology I can talk to. But in the procurement side, we really looked as an industry where we're reducing the cost base. So a lot of the time, the procurement team will report into the CFO, or into the financial area of the business. We do. And so our role is really to reduce cost year on year, whether it be EBIT or cost avoidance. That plays into that business transformation piece, lowering the cost base, increasing margin, remaining competitive, so on and so forth. There's grassroots entry in there through becoming a purchasing officer and working your way up through vet type thing. But in procurement, there's a strong demand for people out of the legal field, whether it be contract law, obviously finance savvy, commercially savvy people. There's more to be said around negotiation and influence in procurement, key skills that you need to be able to have. Things like corporate social responsibility and sustainability, ESG, really, really taking its place in broader business. And that's being, that whole environmental piece around your supply chain and managing, all those different kinds of humanitarian trade-offs and so forth, becoming more and more important. So there's a heap of work around procurement in ensuring business continuity and managing the risk of the supply base and cost. And a lot of varied skill sets. In logistics, if you're managing rail or ports, there's a lot of demand for mechanical and electrical engineers. There's a big push for people from science engineers. The planning and side of things, there's a lot of project management skills required. So being able to project manage, understand critical paths, understand stakeholders, a lot of various inputs coming together to create something. And that's very important over that sort of 5-year to 2-year planning side of things. And then when you move into the shorter term planning horizon, a lot of mathematics, simulation, optimization, digital twins getting built now of supply chains. A lot more focus around ERPs, master data, big data management, which we talked about, getting an intelligence out of our data systems. So there's a lot of work in that around science, plays into probably the automation and technology, which is just becoming more and more important. And the biggest trend probably I see is that the availability of the equipment and the supply chain is being outsourced, if you like, managed locally. So mechanical, electrical engineers maintaining equipment of the supply chain, whether that be warehousing, trucks, trains, ports, and the scheduling of all of that equipment being centralised and automated. And that's being done through a lot of computer science skills. So huge demand pull from data science, computer science, and then you've kind of got e-business and connecting businesses through front ends and back ends and connecting ERPs together and IT. And so I think in closing, we tend to think of supply chain as an industry, but supply chain actually pulls people from every different industry you can probably think about into supply chain. And supply chain probably then has to compete with where those other people might get other sort of sides or sectors of the business where they might get pulled into. So, and then in closing as well, I'll probably just make the final point that what we need to do is understand that these skills are I believe, should be more fungible across industries, across businesses, and we don't treat it that way. And that's probably one of my biggest gripes, if I had to have one. How does the defence industry take people from FMCG or retail, or from mining and manufacturing, or from the agricultural industry? They all seem to operate independently. They all think they're special, and really they're not. I've worked across many of them, and they need to start attracting talent if they want to, being more open-minded. So that's the key, and ASCI's trying to do that through the RegPrac Pro, the RegPrac Log, which is akin to having your CPA or a CA or a CEng. So we're trying to create a standard where if you've got that, you can go from place to place, and it is fungible. But we've got our work to do, and that's probably what I could add.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Justin. It's really interesting to notice that we always think that we are really, really special, and which is good. It gives us some motivation. But yeah, a reflection there that more and more we will be talking about integration across businesses and sectors. And I don't know about you, Sandra, but I am a little bit anxious about the list that Justin just provided us on all the skills and everything that you should know, and some of those things really with deep knowledge. How do you feel about that? How do you see those skills, Sandra?
I agree to many of them. So my background, I've really
been in supply chain logistics for almost 20 years now. Started with a bachelor in logistics, and then after a bit of a break, I really decided to stay in that field and focus on supply chain logistics even more with the certification of at APIX for Certified Supply Chain Manager. And during my work life and also during the certification, it really comes down to the soft skill of people interaction, be it towards your customer, to listen, to actually listen to what they tell you, because people talk about their problems. So when we meet with a customer, it's always to say, how are you? Tell me what's happening. And then they start, oh, this is not working, or there's a problem, and wow, this is more expensive, oh, this takes longer. And then you can kind of go through and really understand what would be a good solution to offer for a customer, or what can we apply here to help him or her to get them out of trouble, or to really open a pathway to say this is a solution that can work for you in the long run. And what Justin mentioned, of course, that requires a good knowledge of or a good base of expertise and knowledge, and also to connect the dots. So I've worked across FMCG, retail, and e-commerce. So a lot of these ways of working or solutions you can transfer into a new sector, or you can transfer from one company to another and say, hey, wait, I've seen that issue in a similar way, so let's try this. Or really bring in all team members to say, what's your approach to support the customer here and to really make a good offering. Because I think in supply chain, probably especially in logistics, when you look at the transport market, when I say I work in logistics and transport, some people say, oh, trucks going from A to B, what's the change? They did that 100 years ago. Well, what's so exciting about it? And I said, yeah, maybe the concept is the same, getting goods from A to B as good as possible. And, we all know the requirements around it. But when you look at the requirements to say, well, how can we make it happen in such a complex world that has changed? And so really customer orientation, that's probably the key thing. But then also not only looking outside to your customer, but also inside. I'm currently in a role of change management with a large FMCG company. And we're trying to, or we're implementing, we're implementing a transport management system nationally, and to really get everyone on board, engage people to say, this is a change on how you work, how your day looks like. In the past, you would say, I start my shift at 5 a.m. and I kind of know what's going to happen. Yes, there's always a bit of drama. That's the life. But in the end, it's predictable. And then, take away that anxiety to say, oh, wow, there's a little piece of technology put in. What does it mean for my everyday life? How do I use that technology? How can I even, gain benefits from it, to really, have that ability to direct people to say, this is what's going to happen, and I'll take you on that journey, and to bring them together to say, this is not just something that comes to you, but this is something where you are also a part of. We do this together. And so for me, supply chain logistics is we are, as I said, one thing is skills, to actually know your basics, to say this is how it works, but then really be the moderator between different stakeholders, or what we see now, age groups, to say this company, there are so many different generations working together, and there are people that, like my dad, right, like close to retirement. There are people that are 10 years younger, 20 years younger. They start their career, they are so much more tech savvy. For them, normal is something completely different than normal is for me. To really, find the good language and find good ways to connect with everyone, to say, this is your background, this is what you've done before, this is your age group, what is your normal, how do you interact with other people? So that's really a skill that I've seen as critical. And that probably comes back then to what you mentioned in regards to technical skills, to really understand how we can transform a business, because often business transformation or change management, that sounds probably a bit abstract, but when you look at it, it's just, for me, it comes down to explain to people what's going to happen and what their part is in that,
and how they can, participate and also reap the benefits of that change. So that really is clear. Change is something positive that happens. It's inevitable. So how can you make the best of it for yourself? So I think that really goes hand in hand.
Fantastic. That's actually great. And Ryan, I'm coming back to you, but with a curveball. I know that you have that fantastic position in supply chain management and procurement, and I'm really into that. I definitely went to get that position, and I have all those skills that Denise, Justin, and Sandra were mentioning. How do I show it to you? How do I demonstrate to Ryan? Because you hold the cards, Ryan. How do I show to you that I have those skills that you and your client are looking for?
Yeah. So usually there's going to be a couple of ways. One will be on the CV itself. And the CV, really, you get one shot at presenting the CV in such a way that's going to grab someone's attention. So in the CV, the importance of articulating the what and the how. So what did they do in those situations, but how did they do it? So for example, it might be what I did was say $50 million for my company. But what companies are typically looking for, and Justin, you can probably back me up here, is how did they do it? How did they innovate? What did they do differently other than just ask for a $50 million discount? What were the systems they used? What was the influencing skills that they used to actually get to that part? And often it's about how did they achieve those things beyond just cost? Because cost is the obvious outcome, but companies typically want you as the candidate to demonstrate to us, how did you do it? What's something, again, slightly more revolutionary than just the typical, yep, we went and asked every supplier for a discount. So that's one way. The second way is really a bit through your attitude, because the skills are one part, but companies want to see that you've got a real attitude and a desire to really go down that path of being able to change, and how might you cope in an environment where it is changing so much. So that they want to see it through demonstrated examples of your actual skill set, but they also want to see it through this really strong attitude, which is one of learning and personal development. All those kind of things are often really common, but it's actually quite easy to pick that if someone doesn't have a growth mindset, if they don't seem to want to go down that path. So I think it's one thing through the CV, and then it's one thing through the human interactions, be it over the phone or video or in person, to really show that.
That's great, fantastic. I'm taking notes here because yes, definitely that can be useful. And now going back to Denise, and then moving the topic across the panel, because we are going through Skills Week. Skills Week, National Skills Week, has a lot to do with the role of learning by doing. And maybe we can take it to an extreme side and say, do I have to have any formal learning at all? So do I have to go to TAFE or to uni or to do a course? Or should I just jump into this supply chain thing and then I will learn by doing everything in my everyday? So what is your perspective? Denise, what's your say about that?
Okay, well, obviously working at a university, I might be slightly biased, but I would say that formal learning is important. But I'd say actually having a combination of both is good. Formal learning allows you to, I guess, to understand the perspectives, get insight into perspectives, practices and processes that are being used outside of just your workplace. If you're only learning on the job, as it were, then, that might be quite narrow. And also, it probably doesn't lend itself as well for you being able to drive change. So if you can get a broader perspective of theory and also how things are being done in other areas, that might help you then, be the change maker and go beyond the status quo in where you're actually working. And I think also attending or going through the process of formal learning really helps to develop that passion for lifelong learning, and to keep on improving yourself, which is obviously really important. And also organisations can benefit from cascade training. So you might have one person that will go and undertake formal education learning, and then they come back to the organisation and share that with others and share their knowledge. formal learning is also good for building professional networks, which isn't just about helping the individual for career purposes, for their own career, but it's also good for sharing knowledge. And one thing we do at university, same in TAFE as well, is where we actually connect the informal learning and the formal learning. So we'll have students studying in the classroom and then going on the job learning through work-based learning, work-integrated learning, whichever one you want to call it, apprenticeships, that type of thing. And then they bring their learning in the workplace back and reflect on it, and then they can make the connection between the formal learning and what's actually happening in the workplace, which is a really rich way of learning. So that's my take on it.
Oh, that's great. And then let's move, because Denise, you mentioned that, oh, I work for a university, so maybe I'm a little bit into university stuff here. So now we move to Justin. Justin, from this very heavy industry perspective, the role of learning by doing, what's your take on that?
It's incredibly important. I think if you look at really where people, it's good to have your base in education. But if you look at how people move up through organisations, and even when you put together a development plan for someone within an organisation, I think it's the 70-20-10 type rule. And, 70% of that 70% is the doing percent. So there is a lot of tacit knowledge within people's heads that you work with, and they're more than willing to share that with you if you're open to it and you go the right way about it. And sometimes getting that knowledge from the benefit of someone whose experience might have been in the industry for 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 years, and getting that handout of knowledge, is as good or better than a formal education, depending on what it is that you're doing. And so the learning by doing piece is completely is the lion's share, I would say. I think that their formal education gives you frameworks and ways of thinking, and that problem solving and the ability to sort of condense information and work through being able to communicate in written communication effectively and concisely. And the more you move up or the more you move around, your ability to be able to communicate in written language to C-suite or senior executives, they don't have time to read 3 pages of information. So formal education is very good for that kind of polish aspect and the ability to condense information and work through information. But I think that the knowledge gained through experience, in many of the roles, I think, I would rather train the skill and have the will than the other way around. And that there's not too much that you can't teach somebody, but it depends on how quickly they need to come up to speed, what you need them for, and obviously it's very case by case. But no, it's the learning on the job piece is really just a human interaction and a human experience, and you can't get that out of a book. That would be my view.
Fantastic. Thank you, Justin. And before I go to the question that came on the chat, which is a really interesting one, I would like to hear from you, Sandra. How did you manage? How did you find a balance between your formal education, between the learning by doing, and what are you doing today on that?
So with the balance, good question. I mean, to be honest, one part of being successful in your role is, as we said, to have the knowledge from previous roles, or when you are new, then surely that formal part is more important. But nevertheless, whenever you join a new team, or you have a new project, or a new task, or you move from one sector to the other, there's always this part of learning on the job to understand this is how FMCG works. This is how it works, or this is the way they're working in a larger company or in a smaller, family-owned business. So I think that component of learning on the job always stays. But for me personally, it's always been important to have that basic foundation or that knowledge foundation to say, this is what I know. I've been assessed for this knowledge by an independent, industry body. And it's not that I say, I've been with this company for 10 years and I know a lot about supply chain logistics, but then I would talk to Ryan and he would be like, yeah, well, okay, but you can tell me a lot. Is there any way that I can, have a bit more tangible result or outcome of your knowledge? What did you actually do and who assessed if that was good or medium or outstanding? And I think with a formal education, that's probably easier than also transition between industries or to transition between companies, because you have something that is, I say, third-party assessment, and it's not just self or your manager saying Sandra did a great job. I put her forward for a new role. And also what we quickly touched on with the network that you develop, I got to know Justin during that certification. So that's really nice to exchange and also to do that not only in your area. So I'm based in Sydney. So, we would have never met if it was not for that course. So that's really a learning opportunity beyond all the formal knowledge to really get to know people that do something completely different to what you do or what you think is a good career path for yourself. But it really opens up your perspective on what's out there, because with supply chain and logistics, there are so many individual roles that are probably also differ from company or to company or from industry to industry. So to really know everything, I think that's impossible. But to have a good network of people in different roles and also probably different stages in their career, they might have just transitioned into supply chain or are in the industry for a long time. That's what I always find very refreshing. So I think coming back to your point, it's really, I think, both really learning on the job and then balanced with the formal education that you should bring.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sandra. Always a challenge. And Ryan, because you are the better here, and I'll throw you another curveball and bringing the question that we have from the chat, and I'm happy to answer that in sequence from you. But, from your perspective, and again, you hold all the cards. From your perspective, how important is it to have a professional accreditation, a registration in today's climate, and why? So what's your take on that, Ryan?
Yeah, I'd say the majority of times it's very important, and sometimes it can legitimately be the point of difference between someone getting onto a short list and ultimately getting the job. So say, for example, there's 10 candidates being looked at and they've all got equal skills, but 5 have got relevant industry accreditations. Often that can be the point of difference, because it shows that, and the reason for it is it shows an extra layer of commitment and professional and personal development to not only them as an individual, but to the industry that they're in. So I'd say majority of times, yes, it's very important. And the reason why is, again, it just shows that level of commitment and development. The reason I say majority of times is because I'd be lying if I said there weren't occasions where some businesses actually don't put as much emphasis on it as others. They just want the pure skills. So generally that's a lower number of those cases, but it actually does exist out there. But on the whole, yeah, it's really important.
Fantastic. And I'll add to that, and then I'll move it back to the panel. One thing that I believe is really important about the accreditation is that it shortens a conversation. Sometimes I have to explain to people who I am, what I do, and it can take a hell lot of time to get to the point and to show the impact. And with an accreditation, with just a few words, one sentence, it's all explained. So it's really good to, get to the point. Also, it is a recognition of who you are and the things that you know, and all this hands-on experience that we just mentioned. Because when you don't have the formal to support you to the same extent, how do you, again, quickly and easily demonstrate all this informal, all this experience? And the accreditation is a good mechanism for that, to show to other people that you have that skill, that you have that knowledge. It didn't come through a formal pathway, but you still have it. And another thing that comes to my mind, definitely, I'm proud of it, and you should be, because it not only differentiates your CV, but it is about you getting recognition from your peers of your excellence in what you do. And that feels good as hell, most definitely. So those would be some of my points about the importance of getting this accreditation. And now we have a supplementary question in the chat. How aware are Ryan, Denise of ASCI registration scheme, reg, prac, log, etc.? So the question is really targeted to you. And Denise and Ryan, if you can please assess the question, and then possibly we move it to Justin and Sandra to have their say on that as well.
I only know very minor details on it because I'm not in that area, I suppose. My work doesn't span into supply chain specifically at university, so I'm probably not my lack of awareness of the scheme is not indicative of anything else. It's probably I'll pass it over to Ryan to answer that one.
Yeah, I'm sort of a little bit arm's length with the real nitty gritty of the registration scheme. So again, I've got a very, very surface level at best understanding of it. So if we've got anyone else on the call or in the room that has a better understanding, please feel free.
Ryan, I can provide a little bit more context there. So I've been through the RegPrac Pro and the RegPrac Log process. So essentially, what that is it assesses both those two sides. One is the formal qualification, and one is the industry experience. So based on a set of criteria, if you meet that criteria with the formal qualifications, and it can take a range of different qualifications. So it's not just one, but it appreciates the full, tapestry, if you like, of where people come from into the supply chain industry. Therefore, it's not just based on one degree. It could be a degree and some additional certifications, and then experience. And then based on those two things combined, if you sort of achieve the outcome of that criteria, you then have a conversation. So it's a one-on-one engagement with someone from the institute, the Supply Chain Institute, just to make sure that that the knowledge that you're saying that you have acquired through experience, and you're able to demonstrate that, and also that you can apply it to your formal qualifications, and there's a thread between the two. And so going through that process, that's how you would arrive at earning your RegPrac Pro or your RegPrac Log. And the intent there is really to be an equivalent to, as I mentioned before, like a chartered accountant, or a CPA, or a CPNG type qualification. But it's not too dissimilar to what you would go through for any one of those types of equivalent accreditations in other sectors or areas, if you like.
Thank you, Justin. And Sandra, what's your take on that?
I actually participated in that registration scheme as well, because I think, especially in Australia, when a lot of people, come into a supply chain not through education or from the very start of their career, but probably later in their life. I think it really helps to make it more comparable, to say, yes, we as youth come from formal education, but also learning on the job. But it really helps to, put a label to that knowledge. As you just mentioned, it just helps to put it out there, to shorten the conversation of your skills and expertise. So that's why I think it's an amazing initiative. And as I said, here in Australia, I think it's just a different approach on learning or formal learning in the start of your career and the start in your life. So that's I think a very good tool to really fill it in later and get that recognition for your expertise and skills. Definitely.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And we are coming closer to the end of our conversation. So I'd like to circulate one last time and hear a little bit from you, your last words, some other insights and perspectives. And Ryan, you started the conversation today. So I'd like to finish starting with you again. Any last remarks for our audience today?
Yeah, I think on the whole, it feels like a really exciting time to be in supply chain. It's a market which has continued to gain recognition about the importance of it and the value to an organisation, and therefore the individuals in the sector, I think, are slowly, but at pace now, really starting to gather momentum. So, like, I'm legitimately excited for the future of the industry. It won't be without its challenges, but I think the state of the market at the moment has again really accelerated in terms of why supply chain is so important, and the value of it as not just a cost center anymore, but as a real value proposition to a business.
So most definitely, supply chain is on fire. And Denise, what are your remarks for us?
Just a closing thought from me, I suppose, is the diversity in the profession. So really, to me, that really calls out, obviously, lots of opportunity, but the need or the value of you being flexible and being able to work across and embracing working across different areas, and that adaptability, I think, will really, be support people's career in the profession.
Okay. Thank you so much. Moving to you, Justin. Final words for us today.
Yeah, final words is that based on skills, I guess, which this conversation is centered around, is that your skills never stop upgrading and evolving. It's not as though we reach a level where we've gone, all right, I've got all the right skills and I can stop. It needs to, it needs to remain relevant with your experience and as you move through an organisation and your organisational level and so forth. So it's something that you acquire and you build on over time. And it's different for everybody because it's an individual pursuit really, where you see your strengths and weaknesses, and sometimes you focus on your strengths and build skills there, and sometimes you see weaknesses and you build skills there. And it's a journey for all of us. And so the thing I like about supply chain is that you'll never stop acquiring skills. It changes every day, and you can it's something you will just continually learn. So it's good for people that like to continually evolve.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And Sandra, I see you that you kind of agreed with you can't stop building your skills. And so your final words for us today.
Yeah, it's a really quick one. Never stop learning, really. I mean, we are in a particular situation, people might have other things on their list at the moment and, developing your skills with all the things going on. But I think it's just a mindset to say, whatever it is, I don't want to feel defeated by life, but really, step up and say, yes, I might need to take a break or, reconfigure what's important. What do I need to focus on? But if you have that mindset of, lifelong learning, I think that's what gets you far.
Fantastic. And I have to say the timing is perfect because we just reached the clock here. So thank you so much for coming, Ryan, Denise, Justin, Sandra, and everyone who is attending this event. I hope you had a good time. I hope you appreciate the ideas that we shared today. And the recording will be available to ASCI members. If you're not an ASCI member, just Google it, go to ASCI, come to us, and we can explain all the benefits, our value proposition and what you take by joining ASCI and going through the registration process. Other than that, we are around. Just you can find us in LinkedIn, and we'll be happy to answer any other questions. And I believe that's it. So thank you so much. And I hope you have a great time, a great week.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Flavio. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all. Thanks, Flavio. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.